Hi everybody, my name is Sequoia. I'm going to be talking today about building shell tools with JavaScript. You might think, hey, I make mostly websites building a command line application. That sounds really difficult. But I'm here to tell you, if you can build a website, you can build a shell tool. Earlier speaker mentioned the importance of opening with a power quote, so there you go. During this talk, I'm going to move pretty fast. It's an overview, but if you miss anything and you want to see more later, don't worry. All the slides are online, and the code base that this talk is based on is also online. So you can check that out. And for this talk, we're going to work through an example application that met a problem that I had. Now, my goal was to listen to Madcap British Humor on the Berkus Way with MP3s at radioechoes.com/the Way. I like to listen on my phone, but there were some problems. The website is very slow. There's a lot of clicks to get to the content, and it just doesn't work generally on mobile. And so I wanted to get all the episodes, and you can go click and download them one by one, but obviously I'm not going to do this. I'm going to spend dozens of hours writing a scraper. And so to give you a little context, I'm going to show you what the website looks like. You go to click download MP3 file. It doesn't actually download the MP3 file. It just opens up an overlay page, which then gives you the download link. And so the scraper that we write is going to have to have kind of a two-step where it says get the detail page, then pull the download link off of that, and then download it. So this is our starting point, a simple web scraper script. And this doesn't have any fancy shell interaction stuff in it. So one more note about the format of these slides. The title of all of them is a link to a Git tag. So you can see that step if you want to look at it further, just click there. Up in the top right, I call out some of the NPM libraries I use for that step. And then I have code snippets, and I just say snippets because I want to emphasize that this is not all the code. It's just some. So here we're going to start out. We have our scraper module. It just has one function called download. We export that. We're going to use the request HTTP library to request the show page. So radio echoes/the Berkus Way. And I've actually wrapped that in Cheerio promises. We've had some other mentions of promises here. I think people probably are familiar with promises. If you're not, it just means that instead of putting callbacks into asynchronous operations, you can call it and then say, then do something else. So once that show page comes back with a listing, we want to get the download page URLs, the detail pages. And we're going to do that using a library called Cheerio, which is basically just like, it works like jQuery in Node. So it makes it very easy if you know how to use jQuery. So we have then get the MP3 URLs. We send a request to the detail page and use Cheerio to parse that and pull the MP3 URLs out. Then for each of those, we download the MP3s. And then we take that list and we send it down with MP3s, which downloads them one by one. And index, et cetera. Let's see how it looks. Okie dokie. So pretend that says index.js. We request the page, get the title, et cetera. It starts MP3 downloads, and then you can see it outputs a line for each file that gets downloaded. So this was my starting point. It's pretty good. Everything's hard-coded. And another issue I had here is that sometimes the output would stop, and I didn't know, is it stopping because the script has died? Is it stopping because the connection's slow? So I wanted to add a little more, wanted the program to give a little more feedback about what it's doing. So what we're going to do is add progress bars. There's a nice library called progress, and it makes it easy to add progress bars. So in our download MP3s, in our the function that gets an individual MP3, it takes the URL and it does a request, and then way down here we pipe it to disk, we stream it to disk as it comes in. But we need to do a couple more things here if we want progress bars. We need first to get some information and set up our progress bar right when the response starts. So we're going to listen to on response. The main piece of information here we need is the file size, and we get that from the content length header. The reason we need that is the progress bar goes from 0 to 100%. Of course, it needs to know what does 100% look like. So if it's a 5 megabyte file, 100% is 5 megabytes. The next line makes it human readable and pads it out so the progress bars line up. So we initialize our bar, we give it our total file size. And this all looks good, but of course we need to increment the bar, and we're going to listen to another event for that, and that's the data event. So each time a new chunk of data comes down the stream, out of this readable stream, we are going to take its length, which is its size, and add that onto the bar. So it's 100 kilobytes, and our bar builds up. And finally, we're going to use chalk because we like colors to output the title in blue beforehand. So let's take a look at how that works. So here it is running. It looks similar to before, but now we have nice blue titles and a progress bar. And we even have ETA, or estimated time of arrival. Very short for these because they're small files. So this looks great, but what if we want to download a different show or download to a different directory? Currently, it's hard-coded to MP3s. Let's make it so the user can set these. So, of course, what we need here is arguments, and we want 2 arguments. We want to be able to set what show we want to download, and we want to set the directory that it should download to. Now, Node exposes the command line arguments through an array called process.argv. And when I say arguments, I actually mean every token delimited by a space. So you'll notice that the first one is Node, the second one is path to index.js. You start with the third one if you want what we traditionally consider arguments. So the script looks very similar to before, except for we're reading these from process.argv rather than hard coding them. And then we also pass the output dir to the download function. And it's very similar, except for now it takes an output directory, and we use makedirp, another npm library, to make those directories if they don't exist. And this is makedirp just does if you do makedirp a/b/c/d, it makes every one of them. So I'm not going to show, don't have a GIF for this one because the output's the same, but as you can see now we can pick the show and pick where it goes. So even though we don't have Node at the beginning of this, the process argv0 is still Node. So you don't have to change any of those things. Now, one gotcha here, it says call the executable index.js. Make sure it's executable. So yeah, you want to use chmod to make sure the user has execute permissions. So this is better. Now we can call index.js directly, but it still downloads every single show starting from episode 1. It'd be a lot better if we could pick how many to download and where in the list to start. So we're going to add a couple more arguments here. For lack of a better name, skip and how many. And we are going to alter our download method here, so when it gets the list of all the MP3 links, it slices it down to how many we actually want to download. And we also are using another useful NPM library here, Node library called async. We're using each series, which just says, take each of the, does he have a laser? No, what's that? Oops. Take each of the values in the links array and run the write remote MP3 function on it and do it serially. So now we can call index.js the Berkus way, music, 10, 5, and tell it that we want to skip 10 episodes and download 5. Now, it's easy to tell just by looking at this that this is not very intuitive. What is the 10? What is the 5? What order do they go in, et cetera. So what we want to do is name our arguments. And we're going to use a tool called Minimist to make it, to parse our switches. Now, our goal is to be able to write index.js the Berkus way, and then an out switch for where we want it to go, a skip switch for how many to skip, and a get for how many to get. We require Minimist, and then we pass it all of our arguments, less node and index.js, and it parses them out. It puts all of the unnamed arguments into an array called underscore, and the first one here is our Berkus way, and then it takes all of the named arguments and it attaches them to the object with the exact same name. So as you can see here, out is out, skip is skip, etc. One more thing to note about Minimist, and the reason that we use it rather than maybe just not using a library to parse arguments at all, is that among the things it does, it doesn't matter whether you put an equals in between or whether you put a space in between. Both are common conventions. It doesn't matter whether you put the show slug first and then the out argument, or you put out first and then the show slug. So Minimist flattens all these things out and makes them very easy. So this is looking better, but the switches are really long. And also, why do I always have to tell it to download to the current working directory? Let's fix that with defaults and aliases. Minimist has these built in. You have an options object with an alias key, and that's a mapping of commands to, or switches to short versions. So for get, we're going to make a short version of n, skip s, etc. And then we want to say if they don't enter anything, if they just say, I want the Berkus way, then download 10 episodes, starting with episode 1, to the current working directory. We pass those options to Minimist, and now if we call index the Berkus way, it downloads 10 to the current directory, starting with 1. If we, if we call the Berkus way -o music -s10 and 2, then it will downloads episodes 11 and 12 of the Berkus Way to the music directory. So this is looking a lot better, but I don't really like this in some ways. It has a usability problem, which is that it's not clear. If I run this and then it downloads 10 episodes, the first 10, and I run it again, it downloads the first 10 again, it's not clear to me that I can even change these things, that I can get more episodes, etc. So if users leave off a couple of these, we want to help them out and say, hey, did you mean to put a value here? So we're going to do that with prompts. Inquire is a node library for the shell that allows you to prompt the user in various different ways using checkboxes, radio buttons, all kinds of neat inputs. We're just going to look at the prompt. Now, prompt objects they have a type, a name, message, and a default value. So we take all of these and we feed them as an array to inquire.prompt, and it will prompt the user with each of these, and when it gets all the answers back, it'll call its callback function with those answers. Now when we run our program, it gives us these nice little prompts with a little green question mark, and it has the default values in there. So this seems like it would work, but we have sort of a complication because we only want to display the prompts if it's not specified. If they pass skip and a switch, we don't want to also prompt them for skip. And so that's pretty easy to remedy. We're just going to have our empty array of prompts, and then after we parse our switches with Minimist, we're just going to check and say, did they leave anything out? And if they left something out, then add that prompt into the prompts array. And then once then at the bottom we can check, is there any length? Are there any prompts there? If there are prompts there, then display those prompts, get the values, and merge them into argv so we have everything that we need. If you're looking at this, you may notice that there's sort of a problem here. We call download right after, but this executes immediately. The prompts, of course, are asynchronous. Up until now, we haven't had that in our index.js. And so this is pretty easy to fix. We're just going to wrap the download function, wrap the stuff that actually calls the download in a function so we can control when it gets executed. Then we call that from the prompts callback. So if there are prompts, it will prompt them. It'll wait until all the prompts are answered, then call it. And if there are no prompts to show, then we'll just run download directly. So let's take a look at how this works. So here I've said skip 10, get 1. You'll notice there are no prompts at all. Here I say just the Berkus way. I don't give it any information, so it's going to prompt me for both things. I'll go for the default values, and it'll download a few before I quit it. And then finally, there is a version where I give it one of the values, but not the other, and it will prompt us for one, but not the other. So this is looking really well. This is looking really good. One complaint I have about it, however, is that I always want these to go to my iTunes directory. And I don't want to have to tell it, and I don't want it to default to dot. And so there's a convention for dealing with a situation like that, and it's runtime configuration files, or RC files. You maybe have edited your vimrc, your Sublime RC, I don't know, Sublime RC, npm RC, etc. And these are just files that get loaded whenever you run a program and run commands at the start or set configuration options. And we're going to use superenv to read our Rado RC file. The application from henceforth is called Rado for Radio Echo's Downloader. So we're going to put our Rado RC in our home directory, and which is nice because it's a really long directory name that these just are things that automatically get added to iTunes. So now we're going to take over default handling from Minimist, because once we're also reading options from another place, then it becomes a little more complicated. So we're going to merge the options together in order of priority. And the top priority is, did they specify it right at the command line? If they did that, use that. If they didn't specify it at the command line, read their RC file. And if it's there, use that. And then finally fall back to the defaults. And so one gotcha is that when you put a tilde in the shell, it expands that to your home directory. If you read it from a file, it does not automatically expand, so we're just going to add in a little function to make sure that it expands the tilde. So we have the Rado RC file set, and let's take a look at how that works. So I say just the 6-shooter. I get 3 episodes, And it starts downloading them to my iTunes directory, and then boom, there they are in iTunes, and as soon as I get them, they go straight into my iTunes. So that looks great. I like it a lot. So download works about as well as I want it to work, and that's great, but I have one pain point, which is that I don't really ever want to have to go back to the website to get these strings or whatever. I want to be able to search from the shell, so I want to add search in. Now, when we add in search, then we're doing two distinct things. We're not just downloading, now we're also have another distinct operation of search. So this makes me think of things like npm or git that have subcommands where you do npm search, npm install, etc. And so we're going to use the commander framework, which makes it easy to add Git style subcommands to your shell tools. And this is going to replace Minimist in this case. So first, we need a new top-level entry point, because before all we did was download. Now we have multiple things, so we're going to make a Rado.js to be our top-level entry point. All it does is require Commander. This is the entire file, and just it tells Commander what commands are available. And right now we just have the download command. We're going to move our index file to Rado download. This is another Commander convention. If you want Rado space download, you name it Rado-download.js. And in Rado download, we've pulled out Minimist for argument parsing. And now we are using the Commander API, which, as you can see, is very different. It's kind of easier to read, and it's also kind of auto-magical because you just put the name of your aliases, the name of your switches, and it just does everything for you. So that's great. So now we have our replatforming done, or sorry, you run Rado.js now, you can see it doesn't do anything by itself, it just outputs, these are the available commands. And then you run Rado download, the Berkus way get 3, we get our prompt for how many should be skipped, so we see this is running as it was running before. So now that we have our sort of replatform out of the way, and we have it based on a system that can support multiple commands, let's go ahead and add search. So, first, we have to tell the top-level entry point file that there is another command available, that there is search, and we tell it a little bit about it, what the signature is, and what it does. In our scraper, we are going to split it up, so rather than just exporting download, it now exports two separate functions. In our search function, I'm just going to look at it from real high level. It returns a promise. Request get async, I've wrapped to return promises. It gets the home page, and then it builds an array of all the shows, and then it filters down and returns a list of shows that match to the search term. So it doesn't actually do anything with the results, it just returns them to use elsewhere. Now our Rado search file, we can require scraper.js.search, and we've also done the same over in our download file. We parse the arguments with program, and then call our search function, and which, remember, returns a promise. And when the promise resolves, the results are ready, and we can go ahead and print them. And what we're going to do is just very simply iterate over all of the results and output the title in blue, bold, with chalk, and then the slug, genre, etc. And I can copy and paste the slug for the download function. So now we can search for shows with West in the title, and it outputs a listing of all the shows that have West. So this looks good. I can copy and paste the slug to my download function and use it there. But as you can see, this scrolls off the screen, and when I look at this, it seems very obvious that the data is tabular. So let's do something about that. We're going to use another library called CLI table, and this makes it easy to make little MySQL-y style tables if you ever use the MySQL command line client. So we require table, we run all of our parse, search stuff, etc., and then when it's done, we call our print results function. In there, first thing we're going to do is set up our table with the headers. Next, we have sort of a funny thing we have to do here. Normally, you would set all the column widths right when you set up your table, but in our case, it's not OK for us to truncate the slug, because then we can't use it for the other program. So we're going to check each slug and make sure that the table width for the slugs, for that column, is wide enough to accommodate the longest one. And so for each show, we're going to check if it has a longer slug than the longest one and set that, and then push a new row of data to the table. And finally, we set those column widths and output the table to string. And it's worth noting that table is actually, I think, inherits array, so it has all the same methods of array. So that's nice. So now, when we search West, then we get this nice table. It looks pretty. Louise Massey and the Westerners, it fits in there, and nothing gets truncated. You see the titles get truncated. So this looks great, and this tool is ready to ship. I'm ready to publish it to NPM. But wait a minute. What about documentation? So Commander gives us some stuff out of the box, which is really nice. So these options, when we wrote this code, we are also kind of writing the documentation. Because when you run Rado.js download help, then it outputs all the options and the descriptions that you gave them. So this is pretty great. So it's looking very good just from us not even doing anything, except for there are a few problems that well, it doesn't really say what this program does, first of all. Second of all, the signature's wrong. This should say Rado download slug options, because we actually need to show slug there. Commander provides for this as well. We can add in a usage string to show that you require a slug, add in a description, and there's also an on-help callback, or an on-help event listener, and so we can print arbitrary extra stuff. And in our case, I like to put examples in there. I'm always appreciate when I find examples in the help, so we're going to add that in. So now when we run Rado download help, we can see that we have the proper function signature, we have description, and we have these nice examples down here. So you may have noticed that our help says Rado download, but we've been using ./Rado.js. And when we npm install it later, it will just be Rado. But when we're working locally, I still want to be able to just call Rado. I don't like this / whatever. Luckily, npm provides for this. You can install a local project as though it were npm installed by using npm link. So first, we're going to have to tell npm when somebody calls us from the command line, when they npm install it or npm link it, and they call it from the command line, what should it call? By default, if you just have one file and one property in bin as a string, it will call that the entry point, and the name is what it's going to make the command. So when we call Rado, it says go to Rado.js. So we npm link from our project directory, and then when we call Rado-help, now we get the same help output. So this is looking a little better. So we have nice help output, but it could be better. Let's bring this up to the next level and add what no shell tool should be without, man pages. Luckily, the creating man pages is pretty easy in Node thanks to a tool called markedman, which will build markdown files into raw, or the man file format. So first we're going to take our README and tweak it a little bit so it looks more man filey. So I put a little 1 at the end to say it's man page 1 in the description, and put things in caps because that's just how it was done, and forever shall it be. So we have a script to build these things into man pages. It's very simple. We read the markdown, we run it through, we convert it to ROF, and then we write man file format, the ROF, to the man directory. Finally, we just have to tell npm where these man pages are, so when npm installs, it will know to link all these man pages. So once we do that, and once we npm install this, npm install this tool, then when we run man Rado download, we get this nice, pretty man page, and we look super professional and great, and that's awesome. So now we're really ready to npm publish, and I'm just going to assume you have your npm user set up. You can do it all from the shell. It's very simple. You run npm publish, and then here's our tool on npm, and there you go. In summary, we looked at some tools to help with CLI input, Commander, Minimist, and Inquirer. We looked at some tools to improve command line output, such as Chalk, CLI table in progress. Whoopsie daisy. And finally, we looked at some tools to make sure we have good documentation, which is also very important, such as Commander, markedman, and npm links our man pages. So thank you to everyone. The slides are at EJS CLI Talk. I have a Node school workshopper coming soon called CLI.js that goes over this similar content. And I hope you all npm install Rado and Rado download the Berkus way.